Shawan, no, Chagan, Xi Jinping wants to be both feared and loved by Chinese people. The coronavirus may change that. If censors in communist-led regime are good for anything, it is spurring creativity. With the new coronavirus stalking China, netizens have been heaping praise on Chernobyl, an American-made TV drama about the Soviet Union's worst nuclear disaster. Their aim is to sneak discussions of the outbreak onto China's tightly policed internet. In less hectic times, censors will swiftly stamp out such impertinence. For the parallels with the reactor explosion in 1986 and official censors, the official cover-up that followed, are painful for China's Communist Party bosses, whose system of government was cribbed from Soviet design. But pointed comparisons keep popping up on China's social media. One urges Chinese viewers to learn from Chernobyl that free flow information offers more security than aircraft carriers, moon landings, and other signs of the globe, other signs of superpower might. Superpower might. Another contrasts the soothing interview granted to the state media by the governor of Wuhan, the province where the virus began, where the epidemic began, with a speech by the hero of Chernobyl, a Soviet scientist, about the cost of official lies. Parallels are likely to continue in the real world. Back in the 1980s, Kremlin leaders scapegoated the local officials and engineers, coolly blaming them for the disaster and denying a wider cover-up. In recent days, Chinese state media have dropped heavy hints that the mayor of Wuhan, the city the industrial city where the virus was first detected, will lose his job. When Shi Keqiang, China's prime minister, was appointed to oversee virus control work, cynics suggested that his role was to take the fall should the outbreak spark a pandemic, in fact to protect President Xi Jinping. As it happens, censors should be relieved that Chinese citizens are focusing on the ills of the Soviet collective leadership. It would be more dangerous if online critics were to start exploring a parallel closer to home, a historical parallel closer to home, namely the way that in Chinese history, natural disasters undermined an emperor's claim to power. More than one dynasty fell after catastrophe signal that heaven had withdrawn its favor. It is not only seen as ineptitude when a ruler was unable to protect his people from floods or famine, 여러분, or as in the second century during the Han Dynasty, for repeated outbreaks of the disease, probably smallpox and measles, that killed perhaps a third of the population. Such bungling showed that the emperor lacked virtue and deserved to be overthrown, people said. Modern-day Chinese may not believe that a rampaging coronavirus signals divine anger with Mr. Xi. Still, the party chief has a great deal at stake in this crisis, precisely because large claims are made about his wisdom, which is now taught in schools and studied by party members as Xi Jinping thought. Every day, state media credit Mr. Xi with the personally guiding China to ever greater prosperity, modernity, and global clout. The leader has amassed such individual power since Mao Zedong or been so lavishly praised. Chinese intellectuals accuse Mr. Xi of claiming the mantle of an emperor, They point to Mr. Xi's speeches praising traditional Chinese culture, and lauding codes of morality and deference to imperial authority, as handed down by Confucius and other sages. The result is an awkward hybrid. On the one hand, officials make claims about the efficiency of the collective party leadership that would be familiar to Soviet apparatchik, to any to them populist insurgencies sweeping the West is proof that multi-party elections, a free press, and democratic accountability are sources of chaos and dysfunction. As described, China's system is a meritocracy that selects highly competitive experts to run the country with a track record of correcting its own mistakes. Yet at the same time, the party's propagandists lay claim to a very different form of legitimacy, involving the people's love and trust in one man, Mr. Xi. So sweeping is their praise of him that it essentially leaves no room for the idea that he could make a serious mistake. This convoluted claim to legitimacy can be heard in the context of a current coronavirus outbreak, as leaders insist that their system of government is ideally suited to tackling the disease. On January 28, Chinese leaders hosted the head of the World Health Organization, WHO, or a UN body that played an invaluable role in demanding transparency in 2003 after China's initial cover-up of the extent of an outbreak of severe acute respiratory syndrome, SARS, which led to many avoidable deaths. Wang Yi, the foreign minister, assured the WHO boss, Tedros, that China would be more resolute this time, thanks to the strong leadership of the Party Central Committee, with Comrade Xi Jinping at the core, and the strong advantage of the socialist system, as well as his experience of SARS. Unaccountable even to heaven. It is too simplistic to assume that all bad things that might happen in China must harm Mr. Xi. The virus outbreak could end swiftly amid worldwide praise for the bravery of China's doctors and nurses, the self-discipline of the public, and the resolve of the Chinese leaders, albeit after a slow start. If the crisis does not end this well, scapegoats will be found and underlings punished. That alone would not have to shake Mr. Xi's authority, which can always be shored up with the repression, still greater ideological discipline, and nationalist propaganda. But a botched response to the virus will lay bare tensions inherent in the party's hybrid claims to legitimacy. Mr. Xi's China is two things at once. It is a secretive, techno-authoritarian one-party state ruled by gray men in unaccountable councils and secretive committees. It also claims to be a nation-sized family headed by a patriarch of unique wisdom and virtue in a secular 21st century version of the mandate of heaven. If forced to choose between those competing models, bet on cold, bureaucratic control to win out. For Mr. Xi and his team learned their own lesson from the Soviet Union's fall 5 years after the Chernobyl disaster. Expressions of the public love for Mr. Xi, the people's leader, are all very well, but keeping power is what counts.